Well, I knew I shouldn't have tried that, but this will be part 2 of the craft fur bait fish. Right now I'm going to snip off, I'd say about six more, and you cut a section about this far, this big. You can see there's all this, like, I don't know, under fur. Take your fingers and pinch down in here, pull. You get rid of your bulk, make it for a little nicer fly, and maybe on the front you want it to look like it's a little bit more bulky. Maybe using a different color and you want it to be more like a bluegill shape over a shiner or something along those lines. You know, you can keep a little bit of that bulk up there, or, you know, maybe cut your fur a little bit bigger. You know, I do, if I can, I'll try to save any of these ones that are a little thicker in consistency for the head area, but it's not really imperative, I don't think, because you're gonna have that fish mask on there anyway. But we got 4 there. There's 5. I'm just gonna hold off on doing 6 just in case, and that way that one can be our bottom. So I have this one's pretty thick, that one's thick, these aren't too thick, so we'll save those thicker ones for the head. And I still can't believe that I turned that video off, because it would have been a pretty good one, but that's alright. We'll do a 2-post, part 1, part 2. Pull up, pull down, push it on, and the further you go back when you push that pen in, the more it smooths out your materials. Because see how it's like this? If I go here, then I'm gonna have to pull, but I'll re-straighten that. Try to keep it, you know, perpendicular to your hook. Push it in. It's gonna grab all your material for you. All you have to do is this, and when you pull, squeeze, pull, squeeze, pull, squeeze. It'll come out nice and easy. You have a nice flow there. Yeah, I had to add a little bit more, I think, maybe. Nah, this might end up being perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, but the right amount of material that we want. Again, and if you notice, when I put this bottom one on, or the top, I'll put it on and then kind of go like this. It's spreading out the back side of the material, the fuzz, if you will, the fuzzy part. And that way it's kind of gonna make it nice and smooth along the edges. And it'll, you know, it won't be perfect smooth. I'm not that good yet, I don't think, but nope, we are gonna need 2 more. But if you look here, I'm pretty close to that eye, but I'm gonna wrap back a little bit and compress the craft fur a little bit. Now if you sit here and go like this, when you bump it, when you're trying to whip finish and everything, look at that thing going nuts. It's not fun. Don't do that as much as you can. Try to avoid smacking your hook, or that's what's going to happen, and it's going to get on your nerves, and then you'll learn not to do it. But I'm going to put 2 more pieces of white, and then I'll do the olive transition color. Cut my craft fur, pull out the under fur, I guess you'd call it. This one here, it's kind of thin, but it's just kind of filling up that space a little bit. Get it right back there. Up. This bottom one's a little bit bulkier, so maybe on my bottom of my very last one, I'll make it thin. And it's not going to be a huge difference, because it's all going to blend together once it gets wet. But I try to keep it, you know, thinner pieces on the bottom, thicker ones on top. So we're right up here. We're going to secure that in. And we'll go right to just before our eye of our hook. And then we'll grab our olive. And you want this one to be a little bit thick to give you some width on the top side of your fly. And you can use other stuff. I'm not going to do it on this one because these are just, you know, standard shiners. But if you wanted to put like a, let's say, a lateral line on this fish, you know, all fish have them. I'll show you how to do that. Right here, I'm just right behind the eye, making my thread, pulling it out of the way. We'll grab a little snip of white here. There's the bulk, there's the fuzz. Pinch down below where that's going to be. Pull it out, no more bulky. And I'm going to do my rocking motion here to make sure I spread it out. Pull my olive out so they don't get intertwined. And they will. It's kind of tough to keep them away from each other. I have them right now, but when they get in the pen, sometimes they'll twist. But if a fish doesn't hit your fly because you have one piece of olive that's in the white section of the fly, you're fishing probably the most selective fish in the world. And you can see as I'm pushing, see how that olive's kind of turning on me. So I'm going to keep my hand up on that, you know, get the rest of my fibers where I want them. I'll leave my hand there, leave it there, keep leaving it there till we get right up to where your fuzz section of the olive is on there. We're going to wrap it back maybe about 3/16, or not 3/16, maybe an eighth. Now we're going to whip finish, bring it up close to the back here, and see how I grab that craft fur. This is the fun part, trying to make sure that you keep, I just got nailed by the Gamakatsu a little bit there. But you'll have to play with your angle of what you hold your whip finisher so that way it doesn't get snagged in there. Pull it tight. And on these, I don't like to pull them because of how much bulk is on that actual thread. And I'm going to encapsulate that with some UV resin. But there you go. If you wanted to put a lateral line on there before you whip finish, you could grab some of this like grizzly half saddle hackle or something. See that feather? Tie that on the side right in there. Or you could even use some flash, which I'm not quite positive where it is right now, but you could just put like maybe 2 or 3 pieces of crystal flash on the side, tie it in, and then you know, it'll be in there, and when that material's in the water, it'll have a lateral line. They make all kinds of different types of flash and stuff. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put our mask on there. I do it a little differently than how they instruct. Not too different, but I'll go ahead and pull my fur back, turn it on its side. This is UV clear finish, and this is thin. Some of the bigger stuff I'll use the thick, but this thin seems to work pretty well on like this size and not as messy, and it penetrates into the craft fur a little bit better than the thick does, so I kind of switched over to that. It's not cheap, but the results of this stuff is awesome. And what I'm doing here is just kind of squeezing it and making sure it's getting in there some. I'm going to go on top of the olive here, doing that same thing. And you'll have some of these strands will get a couple little dots on them, or, you know, it'll pick up some of, you know, maybe it might fall off the applicator or something. And that's not a big deal. You can always trim them off or leave them on. It probably won't matter. I would trim them off just because I want my flies to, you know, just look classy. But that would be one that isn't for me. If it's for me, it's going to have junk hanging off it. I really don't care because I don't really think the fish will. But on these particular eyes, and because this is a resin, it's not going to set up on you like just sitting here. It actually needs UV rays. But when you get these eyes, pay attention to how you hold them and how you glue them in. Because like a fish eye, it transitions with the color of their body. So like right in here on a fish is where that light to dark transition happens on most fish, you know. So on these eyeballs, you'll have the top of it will be darker and the bottom will be lighter. I'm going to try to get that as close as I can. And it's going to be tough for you to see because it's reflecting all kinds of crazy. But just like a fish, they you know, incorporated the dark and the light on these 3D eyes. So we have our UV on there. Pull your head on, and as soon as you touch it, you'll see the UV resin start to apply to it. It's gonna, you know, fill in. You're gonna just be able to tell that that liquid's on there. And if you look, my olive's pretty well centered. I mean, it's tough to get it, you know, perfectly centered on there. You'd have to tie a whole bunch of these or be really, really meticulous. So we have our UV in there. It's totally around it. We have our head on. We're going to hit it with this UV light and kind of rotate it a little bit, let it do its job. And when I put the eyes on, I use this stuff as well. Just put a little bit on there, put your eye on. Make sure you have the dark side up so it's natural looking. And you don't have to leave it on a whole long time. The thick will need a little bit more time to cure, but I always like to make sure it's real good and done. And on these, we'll try to get in here and see. It's a little tough, but the gap on those is a little bit bigger. Now, Flyman's directions have you go back in, take your thread, and put a thread dam in front of it. You can do that. It would probably help hold it on there a little better. But I'll go, and this one was pretty good. Sometimes if you don't have enough resin, there's a gap here. And I'll take this UV, and I'll go inside that gap and squeeze a little bit in there. Hit it again with the light. We'll look at this side. No, it perfectly... I put enough on that one that it, you know, filled out around. I have full penetration. It's on there real good. And now I'm going to take my UV resin and we're going to totally encapsulate the thread. It's almost like you're using head cement, but this stuff will really get in there, and it's going to give it a real pretty finish as opposed to it's actually going to make it look like it's you know, in a bubble or something along those lines, for lack of better terminology right now. But I got that all covered. I'll hit back over the head just to be sure, you know, maybe even go behind it a little this way, because if you put too much of this stuff on, the top will cure but the bottom will stay gooey because there's, you know, so much other junk on top of it that it's going to screw it up. But if you just want to double check your fly, now mine's in the vise, and these hooks have somewhat of a curve, and you have your material clip in the way. So if you look at it like this, it's like, oh my gosh, it looks goofy. But all you have to do is just pull it down again and then straighten it out. There's your craft fur bait fish. I apologize for, you know, the mishap of it's going to have to be a 2-part video, but I really try my best to go over each and every step as, you know, thorough as I can, show the material, estimate how much you're going to need. I would say three whites and one olive would probably be able to get you maybe 14 or 15 of those craft fur bait fish. And I don't know, I like them. I think bass are going to slam these things. Pay the extra money and get that Gamakatsu hook, because they are just nasty sharp. And, you know, fish that are big enough to eat these are going to have harder mouths. Bass, pike, muskie, stripers. They're not a trout. You know what I mean? You really have to have something high quality and something that's really going to penetrate well. But, you know, doing that video took a little bit of time, but I've been timing myself on these, and when I first started, it took me 20 minutes a tie, and it was just grueling. Talked to my muskie friends, and you know, they said, well, why aren't you prepping? And I really don't have an idea why I didn't do that. But prepping your material, having the eyeballs already glued on, having your you know, craft fur laid out in front of you is going to help you save some time. And if you're if you're not worried about filling orders or something like that, it's not really a big deal. But when you're like me and have 3 kids under the age of 4, a full-time sales engineering job, it's high stress, and then you're worried about filling, I don't know, probably around 600 flies you got to tie, and you're trying to get them done by, you know, the first day of trout, April 15th on the western side of the state, you really want to get your tying times down. But my best advice on tying is, when you're first starting out, don't do what I did and try every pattern under the sun and try to create your own stuff and do all that kind of things, because you're only going to develop bad habits, and you're not going to be as you know, consistent. That's a big thing. So you're better off taking a pattern, and every fly, in my opinion, I'm gonna move this out of the way a little bit. Every fly, in my opinion, they all have the same basic things. You know, like these craft fur bait fish is reverse tying. You know, that's all it is. And think of other patterns. You know, a pheasant tail. You know, tying your tail in, putting your ribbing on, wrapping your body, wrapping your ribbing over your body, you know, putting your wing case on. All of those are going to transfer to other patterns. And if you focus on a couple flies, maybe a woolly bugger, you know, tying a woolly bugger tail on transfers over to tying this craft fur bait fish tail on. You know what I mean? Wrapping your ribbing on transfers to all kinds of nymphs. You know, you want them to be durable. So, and my advice, and I'm not a pro, I don't try to be. I think I tie pretty decent flies. They work. But my advice is, don't go out and try to tie every pattern under the sun. Focus on some that, you know, focus on the steps, so focus on the process. Don't think of the pattern, think of the process you're doing. So when you first start, pick a hare's ear. When I tie my hare's ear tail on there, I use hare's mask. You know, I want to focus on how much of the mask do I cut off to make my tail look good. Okay? And then you do that until everyone looks good. Okay? And then you're going to think, okay, now how much dubbing do I put on? You know what I mean? To keep it thin, dub it thin. Wrap it around, do a couple. Whenever you have, if you wrap your dubbing around and as you're coming up here and it, you know, goes crazy on you, you're putting too much on. So then focus on that. Tie a waltz worm until you figure out dubbing. You know, waltz worm's pretty hard to screw up and it works, but instead of tying hare's ears that are ugly or, you know, whatever, focus on just doing your dubbing. You know, focus on putting ribbing on a waltz worm. Make it something a little different. But focus on those processes, not patterns to start off with. And then once you get the processes down, you can transfer to any pattern out there and do it. You know what I mean? It might be a different material, but the process might be the same. If I tie a musky fly or a I'll show you one right here. This was a practice one, but I'll show you on this one here. This tail is, you know, 2 feathers is all that is, and then the bucktail on it, it's the same thing, reverse tying. Bucktail is a little different. Sometimes you want to spin it around, but if I wanted to make this thing two-tone, it would be that same reverse tying, you know? Tie your bucktail facing this way, push the pen over it that way, secure it, and then on bucktail you kind of want to spin it and make it sparse and make sure it's 360 degrees around there. But it's still the same process, you know? So, I got my half dozen bait fish done for tonight. I'm going to do a time check here. I wasn't planning on doing any of these videos, but I haven't done one in a while, and I like doing them. I like hearing, you know, a tip that I gave somebody saved them some time. I like when guys like in that musky group, heck, they cut my tying time in half on these bait fish just by looking at it a different way. So, in closing, you know, fishing season's coming up. I mean, I fish all winter long and then lay off trout in the spring mainly and take my boy out for them. And then it'll be bass time. So if you don't have your nymphs tied up and ready, which I think I might have about 6 flies of my own right now, you need to get cracking on that. If you're already set, start doing some warm water flies. You know, try these bait fish, try buggers, you know, deceivers. I never tried one of those yet. Maybe I'll try a couple of them, you know. But it all boils down to learning your processes first, then focus on the patterns. I wholeheartedly believe that, and that was my mistake of learning how to tie is, okay, I want to tie a hare's ear, I want to tie a spider, I want to try a wax worm, I want to try a San Juan worm, I want to buy this material, I want to buy a whole bunch of this material, I want to buy this. And all you're going to do is, to be honest, unless you sit down and, you know, tie 4 or 5 of them at once, you're not going to retain anything, and you're going to waste a lot of money on materials. You're going to waste a lot of material. And I don't, you know, want to take anything away from what anyone's doing right now, but in my personal opinion, you're really wasting money by doing that. And I learned that because I did waste a lot of money. You know, I have 60 ugly flies, 100 ugly flies, not durable, not processes that look good, not thoraxes that look good. They're just ugly. You know what I mean? They might catch fish, but, you know, until you say, okay, hit the brakes, go back to the basics, which I can almost guarantee 9 times out of 10, unless you're a natural at it, it happened to half the people that are tying. You know what I mean? Or 3/4 of them. You get excited, you want to try everything under the sun, and then you get frustrated because nothing's looking good enough, and then you want to quit tying flies, and you want to go and, you know, whatever comes into your mind, go fish minnows for 3 weeks straight. I don't know. I've done that. You know, you take the fly rod, you're mad because your flies are ugly, you're mad because you can't catch a fish, you put the fly rod down, and then you grab a spinning rod and catch 15 trout. You know, oh wow. And then all you did was just make yourself fall behind again. So I'm kind of rambling, but I hope the video can help you guys out who want to try to do these bait fish patterns. I tried to make it kill some of that learning curve that I had by not asking questions because I like to, you know, try to figure things out on my own. But hopefully, you know, you can try these. If you have questions on them, hit me up. If you have suggestions for me, message me. I'll gladly like to shave 2 minutes off of a fly and still get the same result. You know what I mean? So we're all in this together. Remember that. Don't nitpick at each other. I love it. But I'm going to put these flies away and hit the hay. Wake up and do it all again tomorrow. So thanks for watching, and good luck with your tying.